Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz, and as ever I am the IT Geek. This is a special video. I don't normally post on a Saturday, but this should be Saturday the 11th, I believe, of October. So this video is actually part of the Cyber Back to School initiative that has been run by Dwayne Natwick and Derek Smith, two amazing members of the community. So first of all, I want to start by saying thank you to both of them. And they've done two sort of initiatives recently, so the September Back to School initiative, and this Cyber Back to School, which is very much security focused. So I kind of asked if I could do a video, and my session essentially is going to be around introducing forensic evidence. And this is a feature which is part of Purview inside risk management, but I'm going to be doing it from an AVD perspective, so you can protect your AVD sessions. So I'll get into a little bit about that. But yeah, this is a Saturday video, so this will be 11th of October, I believe. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started with this video. So I'm going to be talking about protecting data in AVD with forensic evidence. And as I mentioned, this is part of the Cyber Back to School initiative, so there'll be lots of cool videos. So I'll put a link in the description to all the content where you can get that, and the September Back to School as well. Again, massive shout out to Derek and Dwayne for putting this together. So essentially today, my kind of agenda is to do a bit of an introduction into what the topic is. We'll talk about what is Purview forensic evidence. I don't know why my icons have got skewed there, I do apologise. We'll talk about some key concepts and architecture. We'll talk about the benefits to organisations. Then, more importantly, the integration with AVD, and then obviously a demo. You know, it's normally how I like to do my content. You know, some theory and then a demo. So let's talk about why, you know, a bit of an introduction as to why it matters. So why does forensic evidence in AVD specifically matter, right? So the rise of remote work and virtual desktops has increased the risk of insider threats, right? As technology moves forward, so do the risks, right? That's going to always be the case. Over the past few years, we've seen a massive shift towards remote and hybrid working, and this model is kind of the norm now. Tools like AVD, Windows 365, they've all enabled sort of secure, scalable remote access to corporate environments. But with this flexibility comes increased risk, as I mentioned, especially from, again, a lot of organizations sleep on this, but those insider risks, and which are often harder to detect than the external ones. We focus so much on external risks that we forget we could have something inside as well. Insider threats can be malicious, for example, data threat or data theft, or unintentional as well. So, you know, accidental sharing of sensitive data or sensitive files. In virtual environments, traditional monitoring tools often lack that visibility into sort of the user behavior, so that user session. And this makes it difficult to understand the intent behind certain actions. So if you give an example of this, you know, a user working from home might upload a confidential document on their personal OneDrive. Was it accidental or deliberate? You know, without context, it's really hard to be able to tell that. And as I mentioned, the traditional monitoring tools can often lack that contextuality that we need and that visibility into those user actions. Most organizations rely on tools like audit logs, like, you know, CM, like Sentinel, and sort of DLP solutions to monitor that sort of activity. These tools are great for detecting events, but often they miss why, and that's the key element, the why behind those events. Again, I'll give you another example. You know, a log might show that a file was downloaded, but not what the user did with it afterwards. And this lack of context, again, that visibility can lead to sort of false positives, incomplete investigations, delayed response times as well. So this is where Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management comes in, and it introduces what's called forensic evidence to bridge this gap. Now, I first saw this at I think it was the AVD Tech Fest a couple of years ago now, by someone, was it Tom? I think it was Tom. Yeah, it was Tom from Microsoft. And he did a presentation, and I was blown away because I was like, wow, you know, this is such a niche use case. And it's something, again, that there's a massive gap in the market for. And again, when I speak to customers, they all, you know, some of the things, especially when it comes out of that discussion between Citrix and AVD, a lot of discussions are around when you've got a secure environment. You know, Citrix does have that session recording sort of feature. Now, this isn't session recording, so to speak, as we'll see, but it does trigger a recording of your session, and we'll go into a bit more about why and how that works. So Microsoft Purview's insider risk management solution is designed to detect and investigate risky user behavior. And that forensic evidence feature is going to add a powerful layer. It captures screen activity during defined risky action. So that's the key there. It's during that action when it's taken. And this means security teams can now see exactly what the user saw and what they did. And this provides that visual context to support any sort of investigation. It's not just about catching bad actors, it's about understanding behavior, reducing false alarms as well, and making informed decisions, right? Again, let's give an example. If a user prints a sensitive document, forensic evidence can show whether they were working on a legitimate project or trying to exfiltrate data. And in this session, we're going to explore how this feature works, its integration with AVD more specifically, and how it empowers security teams. So today I'm going to deep dive into what forensic evidence is and how it works, the key concepts, as I mentioned, behind its architecture and sort of privacy controls, and the benefits it's going to bring to us as an organization. And then we'll do that demo as well. So let's start by understanding what forensic evidence actually is and why it's that sort of game changer for insider risk management. So this is a feature within the insider risk management within Purview, and it captures screen activity during risky actions. So Purview includes a suite of tools for sort of data governance, compliance, and risk management. One of its most powerful features is that insider risk management. It's got lots of different parts to it, but we're going to talk about forensic evidence specifically. And it's going to help detect and investigate potentially risky behaviors by internal users, right? That forensic evidence capability adds a new layer, and it captures visual evidence. And this is in the form of screen recordings, right, when specific risky actions are performed. And this is not a continuous surveillance as well, okay? So this is event triggered, and this means it only activates when a defined risk indicator is detected. So think of it as a security camera for digital behavior, but with sort of strict privacy controls as well. So again, I like to give examples. If a user tries to copy some sensitive data to a USB drive or upload it to a personal cloud account, the system's going to record what's happening on their screen at that specific moment. And this helps security teams understand the context behind these actions, as I mentioned. It logs and alerts, and these can tell what happened but not why. So that forensic evidence is going to provide that visual context, allowing investigators to see the intent behind what the user was trying to do. This is especially useful in sort of ambiguous cases. Was the action accidental? Was it part of legitimate work, or was it even malicious? And again, it helps when it comes to differentiating between false positives and genuine threats, right? So again, let's give an example of a user accesses a confidential file with sort of forensic, with forensic evidence. You can see whether they were reviewing it for a project or trying to send it externally. So it's designed with privacy first principles, right? So, rollback access control and sort of dual authorization in mind. Microsoft has built this feature with privacy and ethics in mind, okay? So that's key to understand. Okay, let me see if I can pronounce this word. Pseudonymization. So this is user identities are masked in the system until sort of an authorized investigation is launched, okay? So good luck pronouncing that word. We've then got role-based access control, and we all know what this is. Only specific roles like insider risk investigators can view or manage forensic evidence, right? Then we've got dual authorization. So this is two separate admins must approve the creation of forensic evidence policy, and it's going to prevent misuse or sort of unilateral surveillance. And these controls are going to ensure that forensic evidence is used responsibly. So only when necessary, right, and in compliance with legal and organisational standards. So it does capture a short screen clip based on defined triggers, and we're going to set some of those up shortly. And it stores them securely as well. So when a trigger is activated, for example, file upload, printing, clipboard activity, the system captures a short screen recording, usually a few seconds before and after the event. So these clips are stored securely in organizational's Exchange Online region specifically. And the default retention is normally 120 days, after which the evidence is automatically deleted unless preserved for an investigation. And there are other tools you can use to do that within Purview. The system is optimized as well to minimize bandwidth and storage impact, and the clips are encrypted at rest for an investigation. And the system is optimized for to minimize bandwidth as well, as we mentioned. So let's give it a few examples. A user prints a document from an AVD session, and the system captures the clip showing the document, the app used, and sort of other visible activity as well. And this enables proactive and reactive investigations of sort of insider risks. Forensic evidence does support both proactive monitoring, so for example, high risk users under watch, and reactive investigation, right? So responding to a data leak alert. It's especially valuable in environments like AVD when users may be working remotely, or, and traditional endpoint monitoring is very, very limited. So security teams can use this evidence to validate alerts, understand user behavior, and take informed actions, for example, coaching, blocking access, or even escalations. Okay, let's talk about some key concepts and the architecture here. So first of all, we've got event triggers, and these define what actions initiate screen capture. So forensic evidence is event-driven. This means it only activates when specific triggers or specific trigger conditions are met. These triggers are defined in the insider risk management policies. So common triggers are going to include, uploading files to personal storage, so Dropbox, Google Drive, copying data to USB drives, printing sensitive documents, using clipboards to transfer data between applications, or accessing restricted websites or applications. You can customize these triggers based on your organization's risk profile as well. So again, let's give an example. If a user uploads a file named, let's say, customer data.xls, like an Excel file basically, and they do that to their personal drive, OneDrive even as long as it's personal, the system can capture screen recording at that moment. Let's talk about the capture modes now. So we've got specific activities versus all activities. So there are two main modes for capturing the forensic evidence. So the first one is specific activities, as I mentioned. So this is the default and most common mode, and it captures screen activity only when a defined trigger occurs. But then we've got the other mode, which is all activities. So this is used for high-risk users or during active investigations. And it captures all screen activity during a defined time window, so 9 to 5, for example. The choice depends on the sensitivity of the user's role, I suppose, and the sensitivity of and severity of the risk they pose to the organization. So again, another example, for a finance executive under investigation, you might enable all activities for a week to monitor their behavior comprehensively. We've then got retention. Let's talk about retention and storage. So where and how evidence is stored. I think I mentioned it in the last slide from a high level. Capture screen clips are stored securely in your organization's Exchange Online region. So the default retention period is 120 days. And after that, the evidence will be automatically deleted unless it's part of sort of an ongoing case or preserved manually. And all data is encrypted at rest and in sort of transit. And this ensures compliance with data protection standards as well. Then we've got the Purview client, so the agent that enables the capture on the endpoints. So that's kind of deployed. So Microsoft Purview client is a lightweight agent that runs on the user's device. In this case, the AVD session host, right? So it's responsible for monitoring the trigger events, capturing screen activity, uploading encrypted sort of evidence to the cloud as well. And the client must be installed and running for forensic evidence to work. It can be deployed via Intune group policy or sort of manual installation as well. Little tip, so in AVD environments, ensure the session host meets the minimum requirements, so Windows 11 Enterprise 23H2, 8 vCPU and 16 gig RAM. Okay, so that's a key there. So then from a policy configuration, so how, and we're going to obviously do this in the demo, how organizations need to define what to capture, right? So policies are created in the Purview compliance portal under Insider Risk Management. So when you create a policy, you need to make sure you define the user scope, so is it department, role, risk level, the triggers, file upload, printing, capture settings, so maybe the duration, bandwidth limits, and then the privacy controls, so the word I can't pronounce, so pseudonymization, dual authorization, things like that. Policies can be tailored to specific use cases as well, such as protecting intellectual property or monitoring high-risk users. From a privacy and governance control perspective, there are built-in safeguards. So Microsoft has implemented strong privacy and governance, as I mentioned before, and these controls are to ensure ethical use. So we mentioned the pseudonymization, the dual authorization, the RBAC controls as well. And again, these controls are going to help organizations balance security with employee privacy and comply with legal frameworks like GDPR as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the flow, right, and the architecture. So user activity in an AVD session specifically, let's start with that. So this process begins with the user working inside an AVD session, right? And this could be a personal desktop hosting Windows 11 Enterprise, joined to Entra ID, and managed via Intune. Let's just use that as an example. The user performs an action, like uploading a file, printing or copying data. And then that matches a risk trigger defined in that inside a risk management policy. So, again, let's give an example. The user opens a confidential file and uploads it to their personal Google Drive, right? That's a standard example there. So that Purview client is installed on the AVD session host and it's continuously monitoring for all these defined triggers. Once the trigger is detected, the client captures a short screen recording, and usually it's a few seconds before and after that event. So this recording is going to include visual context, right? So what apps were open, what the user was doing, and sort of any visible data. A quick note, the client is lightweight and optimized to minimize performance impact as well. And then there's that secure upload then to Microsoft Purview. So the capture clip is encrypted and it's securely uploaded to your organization's Exchange Online region. And it's stored in a protected container as well, accessible only to authorized roles. We've mentioned the default retention of 120 days, and after that, the clip is automatically deleted unless you preserve it. So then it comes the actual alerting, right? So simultaneously, an alert is going to be generated in the Purview Insider Risk dashboard, and you can obviously send notifications about that. But this alert is going to include metadata about the event, so the user pseudonym, the time, the type of activity, and links to the forensic evidence as well. Again, there are those privacy controls. The user's identity remains, it's hidden until dual authorization is granted. So only designated roles, inside risk investigators, etc., can review that evidence. And then the investigators can review that in the Purview portal. Once that's authorized, they can access it to review the evidence. And you can watch that screen recording. You can correlate it with sort of other signals, DLP alerts, audit logs, and determine whether the action is malicious or accidental or legitimate. This enables faster, more secure, accurate investigations as well, and supports compliance and disciplinary decisions. There are some optional actions that you can do. So based on the findings, security teams can take actions such as coaching the user, blocking access, escalating to HR or legal, updating policies to prevent reoccurrence as well. So just to summarize, the architecture ensures that forensic evidence is triggered intelligently, captured securely, stored securely, accessed ethically, and ultimately used to protect sensitive data in the remote environments like AVD, and that's what it's all about, right? Okay, so let's talk about, we're coming towards the end of the theory. You'll be glad to know, but I think it's important to understand what this is because it's a feature that not a lot of people know about. So let's talk about the benefits to the organization. So again, I go back to this visual context that it gives. Traditional security tools generate alerts based on logs and metadata, but they lack that visual context. This is going to fill that gap. So forensic evidence provides those screen recordings to show exactly what the user was doing at the time of that risky action. So it allows us to, as an organization, to understand the intent, that malicious versus accidental, validate these alerts quickly, and avoid misinterpretation of user behavior. It's like moving from reading a transcript to watching a video, much richer and more actionable. So again, let's give an example. A user prints a document. The screen recording shows whether it was part of a legitimate report or an attempt to leak sensitive data. And again, we're making sure we support regulatory compliance and audit readiness as well. Many industries, finance, healthcare, legal, They all require detailed and trails of evidence for investigations. Forensic evidence is going to help meet compliance requirements by providing verifiable, timestamp visual records, demonstrating sort of dual, due diligence. 3, 2, 1. Forensic evidence helps meet sort of compliance requirements by providing verifiable, timestamped visual records. It demonstrates due diligence as well in sort of monitoring insider risks. And it supports internal and external audits as well. Aligns to frameworks like GDPR, ISO 27001, and NIST. And it does that by ensuring data protection and accountability. A little tip: you can provide forensic evidence in compliance reports or incident documentation as well. And it's a protective risk mitigation, right? And it's a proactive one. Instead of reacting to breaches after they happen, organizations can use it to identify risky behavior early on. And this enables that early intervention, coaching or access restrictions, policy refinement as well based on observed behavior, or even reducing the likelihood of data loss or reputational damage, which can be very, very, bad for an organization specifically. It's especially useful in those high-risk roles like finance, legal, or executives. So again, let's give another example. A user repeatedly accesses sensitive files outside of business hours. Forensic evidence is going to help determine if it's a pattern or a one-off. We need to reduce the risk of false positives in investigation time as well. Security teams often waste time chasing alerts that turn out to be harmless. With forensic evidence, they can quickly validate and dismiss alerts by watching those screen recording. This reduces investigation time, analyst fatigue, and alert overload. Also improves the accuracy of threat detection as well. This allows teams to focus on actual real risks. One of the key, and again, I'm a big fan of this, is it empowers ethical and responsible monitoring. Right, it's very easy for tools like this to not take that into account, but Microsoft do cover that off. Surveillance can be very sensitive topic. Microsoft have designed this feature with privacy first principles. I've mentioned this a few times. So we've got the pseudonymization, we've got the dual authorization, the RBAC. And these controls are going to ensure that monitoring is targeted, justified, and compliant from an organizational perspective. So organizations protect data without compromising, employee trust. We've got seamless integration with that Microsoft ecosystem. So obviously I'm specific around AVD, but also integrates with Intune, Purview, and your M365 E5 licensing. This means there's no need for third-party agents or tools, centralized management and policy enforcement, and it's unified experience for security and compliance teams. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the AVD integration before we move on to the demo. So let's talk about some supported scenarios and requirements first. So forensic evidence is currently supported only in personal desktop hostables in AVD, so not pooled desktops or remote app sessions. And the session host must meet specific requirements. So it must be Windows 11 Enterprise version 23H2, minimum 8 vCPU and 16 GB of RAM, must be Entra-joined, what used to be Azure AD, must be Intune enrolled as well for policy and client deployment. These requirements ensure the host can run the Purview client efficiently and securely. Bit of a tip: always verify that your AVD image meets these specs before onboarding, right? From a licensing perspective, to use forensic evidence, your organization must have Microsoft 365 E5 licenses. So that includes the Purview Insider Risk Management add-on, it includes Intune, and that normally includes Defender for Endpoint. So this is optional, but sort of recommended for that layered protection. Licensing is per user to ensure that monitoring users are the users you're covering or monitoring are covered by that E5 license. As I mentioned before, quickly I mentioned installing the Purview client on AVD hosts. It's an agent and it's responsible for capturing. It's a very lightweight agent and it's responsible for capturing screen activity. And it must be installed on the AVD session host. But you can deploy it via Intune or manual as well. And obviously Intune is probably recommended for scale and automation. After installation, the client runs in the background and it listens for those triggers. A bit of a tip, I'd use Intune's device configuration profile to automate deployment across multiple hosts. So when it comes to configuring the risk policies in AVD, we're going to have a look at that in the demo. So Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal is where it's at. And then we're going to define the user scope, the risk indicators, the forensic evidence capture. We're going to enable that and configure the privacy controls. Okay. You can also set capture duration and bandwidth limits to optimize performance as well. An example, we'll try and do this as well in the demo. We're going to create a policy that captures screen activity when users in the finance department upload files to personal cloud storage. From a triggering and capturing evidence in AVD perspective, only the policy is active and the client is installed. The system is ready to be captured. Right, the system is ready for that evidence capture. When a user performs that risky action in the AVD session, the Purview client's going to detect that trigger. It's then going to capture a short screen recording before and after the event, and that's going to encrypt that data and upload it to Purview. Then an alert's generated, and you can see that in the Insider Risk dashboard, and investigators can review the evidence, right? And when you're reviewing it, and the evidence, you can take action as well. So investigators can access Purview portal to review alerts and evidence. Then they can watch the screen recording, and they can correlate with other signals, like Defender for alerts and DLP, and they can determine the instance and the sort of intent and the severity of that trigger. And then again, based on those findings, they can take an action. That might include coaching the user, blocking access, escalating it to HR or legal, or even uploading and updating policies. Bit of a tip is to use the evidence to support disciplinary decisions or compliance reporting. So right, let's bring all this together now, and let's do a demo time. So please join me in my demo tenant, and let's have a look at how we actually set this policy up. Okay, welcome back to the demo. So we are in the Purview portal here. So this is where we configure the actual policy, the sort of insider risk policy, the investigation policy, whatever you want to call it, right? The insider risk management policy. So we want to go to insider. So we're on the home page. We want to go to insider risk management, and we want to go to forensic evidence here. So first of all, we can see a bit of a warning, or whatever you want to call it, about the version of the client. So just make sure if you've got a firewall, you need to update your firewall with the proxy server allow list. So first of all, we need to turn it on. So it's off at the moment, right? So we need to turn that on, so we can actually start capturing data. Then we need to start looking at the capture window. So decide when to start and stop capturing activity. Do we want to do it 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes before the activity is detected? So I'm going to put that to 1 minute. So basically this will start recording 1 minute before the activity is detected for the forensic evidence policy. And then after the activity ends, how long after that? Again, I would say I'm going to put this to 1 minute, right? Then from an upload bandwidth limit, again, with AVD, this might not matter as much because it's obviously in Azure, so it's going to use the Azure backbone, the Azure internet connection. But again, if this is for laptops, you would obviously want to control that, on premises, or, even if they're at home, you want to kind of control how much that's been. I'm going to leave it at 250 meg per user per day. And then we have the offline capturing, again, less, not really required for AVD because it's always online, but capturing, cache limits for offline use. So you'll store it on the user's device, maybe for laptops if you configure it for that. But for us, it's not needed. Okay, allowing deletion of forensic user data by an administrator or investigator. I would leave this off. I don't feel comfortable personally allowing administrators to delete data. Let it happen regarding, so there for 120 days. If you have policies in place to move that or archive that or even delete it beforehand, fair enough. But let's leave that to policy rather than people. And then device resource utilization. So this applies to all devices in your organization. So this is obviously one that you want to make sure is in line with your device usage for AVD, because again, it's, you don't want to use too much bandwidth, CPU, GPU, things like that. So let's save that. So that's us turning it on at the moment, right? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we can see the forensic evidence has reached general availability, so we can start claiming 20 gig if you wanted. So let's go to dashboard. We can claim that if we want. We've got capacity and billing here, but we've then got the actual settings here, right? So this is just the overall settings. What we need to do is configure a policy. So let's go to policies. And then we've got some other policies there, but we want to create, let's go to custom policy. So we will give this a name. So again, what type of policy do we want here? We want for data theft, data leaks, security violations. What type of policy do we actually want to configure? So straight away, if we look at the data theft by departing users, that's the first sort of option we've got. If we want to detect data theft by departing users near or their resignation or termination date, there's some prerequisites. So, we need a HR data connector, we might need a physical badging connector. I've got the device onboarding already. So it says the HR data connector is recommended, so that'd need to be green. Connect cloud apps as well. So we've got a lot of things we need to put in place and prerequisites. We then got that. So these are the policy templates, by the way. So if we want to do data leaks by departing users, we'd have to have some of these prerequisites in place. From a data leaks perspective, again, tells you the prerequisites. Most of them are optional. DLP policies, devices onboarded. Data leaks by risky users. Again, prerequisites are optional or recommended ones. Okay. We've got data leaks by priority users. Again, priority user group that's required. So that has to be in place. Optional, DLP policy, device onboarding. Got the risky AI usage. So again, these are the template. This is another template. The prerequisites, recommended ones, optional ones. Then we've got the security policy violations. So again, you'd need to have Defender for Endpoint subscription, which is required, and Defender for Endpoint security alerts shared with Compliance Portal. That's required as well. That's not in place yet, so we can't do that yet. Again, security policy violations by departing user, security policy violations by risky users, security policy violations by priority users. Then we've got the health record misuse. It's currently in preview. It detects health record misuse. So again, if you're in the health sector, that'll be a good one. Or risky browser usage. So this detects web browsing behaviors that might be in violation of your organization's acceptable use policy. Let's just go a step back a second. So you want to go actually just to do the. Let's cancel this actually. So if we do quick policy again. Data leaks, these are the templates, right? So it's going to go straight into templates, email exfiltration. So let's do data leaks. So this is the help. This is more of a built-in, using built-in policies, right? And we should have all the same options. So let's just give it. Can leave that. Give it a name, or let's give it a quick demo policy. Right, it gives us the date. So do we want to include all users, or do we want to specific users? So let's put in one of my test users that I like to use for demos, Bruce Wayne, Batman himself. Very, very dodgy if you ask me. So settings, they're filled in for you. So it tells you what they've so user performs an exfiltration activity, and the indicators are sharing SharePoint files. It tells you exactly what is going to be indicated on, right? Downloading content. Now, again, if we want, we can customize these indicators. So it depends. I think in a lot of cases, when it comes to forensic evidence, you will end up creating policies, custom policies, because again, the specific use cases, right? You're gonna, there'll be, when there's investigations and things like that, you might have certain use cases that you want to kind of be monitoring for all the time. Depends on your industry, doesn't it? But again, if we go to customize that, we come back into this, right? So this is specifically to data leaks because that's what we wanted to. So we've got that in place. Fine. Don't need to give it a description for this. Admin unit, skip that. User and group, we know a specific user that we were going to trigger, who was, it was Bruce. It was Batman, wasn't it? Bruce Wayne. Where is he? There he is. Brucey. Add him. Go to next. So do we want to exclude any users? But we've only included one user, so we don't need to do that. So this is where we do content. So it might be specific. So choose what to prioritize. You'll want to add specific items. Certain file extensions, certain SharePoint sites. This is where we can add those sites, right? So this should hopefully load all our SharePoint sites, and we can just tick which ones we want. Okay, so let's go pick a couple random ones here. We'll add those so that we know when Bruce accesses or tries to share anything with these sites, we know that's going to get. Are there any sensitive info types we want to associate with the content. So let's just say any medical records, any passport numbers, for example. Any file extensions, let's just go .docx .xlsx. So let's just leave that for now. So that's Word files and Excel files. So get alerts for all activities, or get alerts only for the activities that include priority content. Right, again, the risk scores will be assigned and alerts generated for specific activities, regardless of whether they include priority content, or you only get alerts for activity that includes priority content. So I think I'm going to leave it for all activities. So this is triggering events now. So this is the important bit. So user forms an exfiltration activity. So this includes downloading the content from the SharePoint site, sending email with attachments in, printing files, copying from, creating or copying files to USB. These are all the activities it's going to include, right? Again, we can select which ones we want. I'm going to leave it on all those for now. It's going to imply the built-in thresholds, or we can choose our own thresholds, right? If we leave it at the built-in thresholds for now, but if you just go through download content from SharePoint, 300 activities per day, the number of activities for file containing sensitive info types, 100 per day. We can customize these if we want, right? The number of activities, the files matching priority, content, sending emails with attachments in, how many activities per day, printing files, how many of those activities. So much we can customize. So you can be really, really granular with this, right? I'm just going to go with the pre-built sort of built-in thresholds. Again, when we go to our indicators, the following indicators are used to generate alerts. So we've got 5 office indicators, there's no device ones, so we can select those if we want. Physical access, we've got none of those. If we just look at the office ones here, sharing, so sharing SharePoint files. So we've already kind of selected these already, but you can see there's no others apart from the office indicator. So again, you can choose what indicators you want, with more specific as you want as well for your, there's physical access indicators, Microsoft Trend for Cloud App indicators, loads here. See how granular it is. I'm just skipping through a lot of this and just giving you information around what you can do, but go to next. The final thing is detection options and indicator thresholds. So a sequence is a group of 2 or more activities. So I think we've already, again, because we've used the template, we download from Office 365, Microsoft 365 location, then exfiltrate, downgrade or remove label when exfiltrating, downgrade or remove label, downloading when exfiltrate. So look at how many options we've got to include when it comes to the detection options. And you can cumulative exfiltration detection as well. So it can detect when a number of exfiltration activities the user performs over a certain time exceeds the norm. The risk score boosters. So it's very, very granular. So I would recommend you have a play with these settings and install the client and just see how you can trigger these events. And then finally, we've got choose the threshold type for indicators. And then the recommended is to apply the threshold specific to your user's activity, but you can apply thresholds provided by Microsoft or choose your own thresholds as well, right? So we've got to, I'm just going to leave it, apply the threshold specific to user's activity because that's what's recommended. And finally finish. So this is our insider risk policy that's going to trigger our forensic evidence. And obviously we'd now need to install our agent onto our AVD session host. And if as and when our mate Bruce logs in and does any of these activities, triggers any of those activities, it would start recording his session. So that is time. That is my session done on forensic evidence with AVD and that integration. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please do drop me a comment in the video if you've got any questions. I promise I've not got an AVD session host with Windows 11 on yet, or that version, so can't kind of show you that alerting and how that works. But I'd recommend meeting the prerequisites on the AVD session host, personal host pool, and then setting up the triggers and the policy and having a play about with it. Like I said, really, really powerful. And I think it's a very good kind of, it fills a massive gap when it comes to security and being able to alert on certain malicious activity, even accidental activity, internally rather than from external threats. I've got a lot of useful links, all to do with this initiative by Derek and Dwayne. So thank you to them for setting up Cyber Back to School. I'll put a link into where you can see everyone else's content, some great content over the last couple of months for the two initiatives. So thank you everybody for watching. Until next time, goodbye.